AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in after he lost his job. So, this is going to be a long one, but I feel like context is really important here. I, 29F, have lived in my apartment for about 3 years now, and I've worked hard to make it my own little sanctuary. It's a modest 2-bedroom place, but it's mine, and I pay all of the bills and rent on my own. I've always been independent, and I like keeping my space and routine. My younger sister, Lily, 26F, has always been a bit more, let's say, spirited when it comes to decision-making. She's amazing in many ways, but she tends to jump headfirst into situations without thinking them through. She's been dating her boyfriend, Mark, 27M, for about a year. I'll be honest, Mark and I have never really gotten along. He's a nice enough guy in general, but he has a history of being a bit irresponsible. His idea of handling problems usually involves avoiding them until someone else solves them for him. And I've seen this firsthand over the past year. A few weeks ago, Mark lost his job. It wasn't entirely unexpected. He'd been having some issues at work and had a few warnings. Lily was, understandably, upset and stressed. She asked me if it would be okay for Mark to stay at my apartment temporarily while he figured things out, maybe a few weeks until he could get back on his feet. I said no. I tried to explain my reasoning gently. My apartment is small, I have my own routines and work schedule, and I really value my personal space. I also pointed out that this could set a precedent of him moving in whenever things got tough, and I wasn't comfortable with that. Lily got upset. She said I was being selfish, and that family is supposed to help each other out. I tried to remind her that there are other options, like staying with her parents for a bit, or even looking for a cheap short-term rental. She argued that my apartment was closer to Mark's job prospects and that I was the only family member he trusts. I stuck to my decision, thinking that would be the end of it. But things escalated quickly. Lily started dropping hints that if I refused to help, she might reconsider our relationship. She said things like, "I guess I'll have to figure out who my real family is, and it's amazing how little you care about me and Mark." Mark himself started messaging me directly, telling me that I didn't understand what it's like to be in his position and that I should step up for family. I blocked his messages after the third one. Then, a week later, Lily showed up at my apartment unannounced. She was crying, and Mark was behind her. She told me that they really needed a place to stay and that it would be just for a few days. I reiterated my boundaries. She tried to guilt-trip me again, and at one point, she actually started packing some of Mark's things into my hallway while I was at work. I came home and stopped her, telling her she needed to leave. That night, she sent me a long message calling me cold, ungrateful, and cruel, and saying that I was choosing my apartment over her happiness. I didn't respond, but I did talk to our parents about it. They said that while they understand my perspective, they think I should have at least offered some compromise, like letting him crash on my couch for a night or two. I explained that my apartment isn't set up for that kind of temporary living, and I don't think short-term compromises work if the people involved are already used to relying on others. The argument really hit home for me because I realized this is not just about Mark moving in, it's about boundaries. I've always had trouble enforcing them, especially with my family, because I want to help, but I also have to protect my own mental health. This is the first time I've had to really say no firmly, and it's been rough. After that, Lily stopped talking to me for a few days. When we did talk, it was cold and tense. She accused me of choosing my apartment over my sister's future, and Mark started posting passive-aggressive stuff on social media about how supportive family members should behave. I haven't responded. I've been careful to maintain my boundaries and stick to my decision. Recently, Mark found a new job, so the pressure has eased a bit. Lily has started talking to me again, but the atmosphere is still awkward. She keeps bringing up the situation and pointing out how hard I made things for them, even though it's been months. My parents have hinted that maybe I should have been more flexible, and even a few of my friends have asked if I was too harsh. I feel guilty, but I also feel like I did the right thing. I didn't insult or kick anyone out aggressively. I simply enforced boundaries I've always needed. At the same time, I wonder if family should be more about sacrifice, especially in hard times, and if I overreacted. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in after he lost his job, even though it caused a huge rift in my family. Character count, 6,452. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding because she doesn't earn enough to cover her own costs? So, some background. I, 32F, have always been the more financially stable sibling. I have a good career, own a house, and generally manage my money well. My younger sister, Lisa, 28F, has had a much harder time. She's switched jobs multiple times, often in fields that don't pay well, and struggles with budgeting. Our parents have always been very supportive of her, sometimes to a fault, and I've tried to help too, though less consistently because of my busy schedule. Last year, Lisa got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 30M, who is a nice guy, but also not particularly wealthy. They immediately started talking about a wedding, and it quickly became clear that they wanted something big and fancy. By big, I mean a venue that cost tens of thousands of dollars, a photographer with a long wait list, a 5-piece band, designer dresses for the bridesmaids, and the works. Honestly, I don't think they even had a rough budget. They just knew what they wanted and assumed money would somehow appear. From the beginning, my parents and I were wary. My parents gently suggested downsizing, but Lisa and Mark insisted that their dream wedding was non-negotiable. They made it clear that they didn't have enough money to cover most of it themselves and expected help. My parents agreed to cover some things, and naturally, Lisa asked me to. At first, I hesitated. I love my sister and want her to have a beautiful day, but I also live independently, have my own bills, and can't exactly drop $20,000 on a wedding without seriously affecting my own finances. I suggested alternatives, like scaling back the guest list, choosing a more affordable venue, or having the wedding on a weekday to cut costs. Lisa got upset and accused me of not supporting her and always judging her life choices. I tried to compromise by offering to cover certain specific things, like helping with decorations or paying for a photography package that was within my budget, but she rejected that, saying it wouldn't be enough. Fast forward a few months, and the tension escalated. Lisa repeatedly reminded me and my parents that she doesn't earn enough to fund her own wedding and implied that it was our responsibility to make it happen. She sent messages with breakdowns of the costs, highlighting how little money she had saved and subtly shaming us for being financially comfortable. At this point, I finally told her bluntly that I was not going to fund her wedding. I explained that I would contribute a reasonable gift, attend the wedding, and help in other non-monetary ways, but paying for a significant portion of the wedding was not something I could do. Her reaction was dramatic. She cried, accused me of being selfish, and said that my refusal proved that I didn't care about her happiness. Mark tried to mediate, saying he didn't want me to feel pressured, but Lisa kept pressing. She even brought our parents into arguments, saying things like, "If you loved me, you would help, and you all have the money. Why should I struggle?" Our parents are now in a tricky position. They think I'm being too rigid, but also recognize that the wedding she wants is unrealistic for her income. There's more context here, too. In the past, Lisa has relied on both me and our parents for various expenses. She's asked for help with rent, bills, even small things like birthday gifts for friends, and while I helped when I could, there were times I said no because it wasn't sustainable for me. She often brings up these past times to guilt me into giving more. I feel like this wedding is just an extreme version of that pattern. A few weeks ago, Lisa went ahead and booked a venue anyway, paying a deposit with her credit card that she can't realistically afford to pay off on her own. She announced this to our family like it was an accomplishment. My parents were relieved she took initiative, but I felt like it was going to blow up financially, and they might end up bailing her out anyway. When I expressed concern, Lisa told me I was being negative and that I was choosing money over family. The conflict has now spilled over into other areas. She's barely speaking to me, except for occasional passive-aggressive texts. She keeps hinting that she expects me to change my mind and provide financial support, even though I've been clear about my boundaries. I want to help her in ways that don't put me in financial jeopardy, but she seems to interpret anything short of full financial backing as neglect or betrayal. I'm struggling with my own feelings. On one hand, I genuinely want my sister to have a beautiful day and to be happy. But on the other hand, I can't justify putting myself in debt for something that she is capable of scaling to her means. I feel like if I cave, it will set a precedent for future financial expectations that I simply cannot meet. I also worry that by not contributing, I'm causing a rift in our family, which I hate. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding because she claims she doesn't earn enough to fund herself. AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices during a family vacation and causing a huge fallout. This is going to be long, but I need to get all the context out. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Megan, 28F. We've always had a complicated relationship. She's more free-spirited and impulsive, whereas I tend to overthink and plan everything. Our parents are divorced, but both are still in the picture, and we usually do some sort of big family gathering once or twice a year. I have a 6-year-old son, Liam, and Megan has a 4-year-old daughter, Sophie. A few months ago, our parents suggested a week-long vacation to a beach town for the entire family, which included both parents, my sister, her fiancé, Matt, our kids, and me. Initially, everything seemed fine. We all agreed to rent a large beach house with enough space for everyone. I made a checklist, coordinated flights, car rentals, groceries, and activities for the kids because, honestly, I assumed someone had to. Megan insisted she had everything under control, but she also kept changing her mind about what she wanted to do. So, I ended up redoing a lot of the plans. The first 2 days were smooth. The kids got along, we had a few beach days, and dinners were somewhat organized. Then things started to go south. Megan started letting Sophie do whatever she wanted without limits. For example, during one dinner, Sophie threw her entire plate on the floor because she didn't want to eat the vegetables. Megan laughed it off, called it cute, and gave her another plate of food. Liam, who is usually easygoing, watched this and immediately started testing boundaries too. I tried gently correcting him and explaining why certain behavior wasn't okay, but Megan rolled her eyes at me, saying I was being uptight. That night, I sat down with my mom and expressed some concern. I wasn't trying to start a fight. I just wanted advice because I felt like I was watching two different parenting styles collide, and it wasn't going well. My mom agreed that Megan's approach seemed chaotic, but said she didn't want to get involved. I understood that, but the seed of worry was planted. The next morning, we planned a day at a local amusement park. I suggested we all get tickets in advance so we could skip lines and stay organized. Megan insisted she would figure it out on her own. Of course, she didn't. We spent an hour in the scorching sun trying to buy tickets with Sophie running around, screaming, and climbing on everything. At one point, Sophie grabbed a stranger's ice cream cone, and when they asked for it back, Megan just shrugged and said, "She's a kid, she'll learn." Liam looked frightened and started crying. I grabbed him and tried to calm him down, while Megan said I was ruining the fun. After this, I felt like I had to address things directly. I pulled Megan aside and said, calmly but firmly, that I was worried about the lack of discipline and boundaries with Sophie. I explained that Liam was picking up habits from her and that we were creating chaos that could have serious consequences, like accidents or public embarrassment. Megan got immediately defensive. She said I was judging her parenting, accused me of trying to control her, and told me to mind my own kid. I tried to explain that I wasn't criticizing her as a person, just pointing out the impact on all the kids and the vacation, but she wouldn't listen. From there, things escalated. Megan started snapping at me over minor things. I told Liam not to run barefoot on the wooden deck, and she yelled that I was a helicopter mom. When we were packing up for the beach one afternoon, she refused to put sunscreen on Sophie, claiming she liked the natural tan, and Sophie immediately started complaining of sunburn. I applied sunscreen to Liam and told her gently she should do the same. Megan accused me of taking over her kid again and stormed off. The situation came to a head on the 5th day. We were having a family barbecue at the beach house, and Sophie, unsupervised for about 5 minutes, dumped a bowl of snacks into the sand, ran into the water, and then wiped sand all over the picnic table where our food was set. I told Megan in front of everyone that she needed to supervise her daughter, or we were going to have a mess every day. Megan lost it, yelling at me that I was embarrassing her, that I couldn't tell her how to parent, and that I was turning this into a discipline war. Matt, her fiancé, stepped in and said I was being unnecessarily harsh and that I should leave them alone. At that point, our parents also got involved, and the argument became a full-blown family confrontation. Everyone started taking sides. Some relatives sided with me, saying it was reasonable to be concerned about safety and mutual respect, while others sided with Megan, saying I was too controlling. Sophie cried, Liam got anxious, and the mood of the trip completely collapsed. After that day, Megan and I barely spoke. She packed her family up early and returned home a day before everyone else. We've had very minimal contact since then, and when I try to reach out to apologize for any personal offense while maintaining my point about safety, she didn't respond. Our parents are caught in the middle and have expressed frustration at how tense the family dynamic has become. I've been replaying the events in my head over and over. Part of me thinks I was right to say something. Sophie was running into potentially dangerous situations, and Liam was being negatively influenced, but another part of me wonders if I overstepped. I didn't intend to attack Megan personally, just to address the behavior. So, AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices during the vacation. Even though it caused a huge fight and ruined the trip, AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's wedding after he cut me out of the planning. So, this is going to be a long one, and I'm not proud of every detail, but I need some outside perspective because my family is utterly divided, and I honestly can't tell if I'm the A**** here. I, 32F, have a younger brother, Mark, 28M, and we've always been reasonably close, although we have very different personalities. I'm organized, methodical, and prefer to plan things well in advance. Mark is spontaneous, impulsive, and tends to make decisions without thinking through the consequences. Our parents have always been more lenient with him, which has been a sore point for me over the years. About a year ago, Mark got engaged to Lily, 27F, who is great but very traditional and somewhat controlling when it comes to social events. From the beginning, Mark seemed excited to have me involved in wedding planning. I assumed this was a normal gesture since I've coordinated multiple events for friends and family, including my own wedding 4 years ago. I offer to help with everything from venue selection to budgeting to creating timelines. I even started looking into caterers and floral arrangements, thinking I could make things easier for him because planning weddings can be a huge stress. Initially, things seemed fine. I sent him and Lily spreadsheets with budget estimates, suggested venues, and even offered to help negotiate prices since I have experience with event planning. About 2 months into planning, I noticed that Mark and Lily started making decisions without consulting me. They would send me messages like, "We booked this vendor," or "We're going with this theme," after the fact. I brushed it off, thinking maybe they just wanted to surprise me with finalized decisions. But then, things escalated. They began making choices that I felt were financially reckless. They booked a venue that was over double their original budget, hired a band that cost nearly as much as the venue, and insisted on a 3-tier cake that cost more than my entire wedding. I tried to explain that this could easily spiral into a massive financial problem, but they dismissed me, saying I was overthinking everything and not being supportive. I even suggested a few ways to cut costs without affecting the overall experience, but every suggestion was ignored. The turning point came when they created their wedding website and specifically stated that family contributions are welcome, but not required, which I thought was fair. A week later, my parents called me upset because they'd received a message asking them to chip in more than they were comfortable with. When I asked Mark about it, he said, "We just need a little help. It's not a big deal," as if my parents being asked for money didn't matter. At that point, I realized that this wedding was quickly becoming a financial burden on everyone but them. The breaking point came when they asked me to pay $2,000 for a bridesmaid dress that I didn't even want to wear. Keep in mind, I offered to help with planning, which I assumed would be my contribution, but they insisted I also pay for my dress on top of that. I explained that I couldn't afford $2,000 for a dress, especially since I was already contributing my time and expertise. Lily snapped at me in a text, saying, "If you can't support your brother and be part of his wedding, maybe you shouldn't come." Mark didn't intervene, which made me feel blindsided. I decided at that point that I wouldn't financially contribute to their wedding beyond what I was already doing, helping plan. I continued to offer planning help, but I refused to pay for any of the extravagant extras. That's when the real family drama started. My parents were caught in the middle. They think I'm being unreasonable because it's Mark's big day and families chip in all the time. My aunt and uncle also got involved, arguing that I should just pay the dress and let it go, which makes me feel like no one is seeing this from my perspective. Mark and Lily have stopped talking to me directly. I don't even get invited to discussions about seating charts or rehearsal dinners anymore, which hurts because I genuinely wanted to be part of this. I feel like I'm being punished for refusing to pour money into a situation that is already financially reckless. Now, the wedding is 2 months away, and the tension is unbearable. I've started to distance myself because I don't want to be around constant passive-aggressive comments and guilt trips. My parents are furious with me, saying that I'm making Mark feel abandoned. Some family members have accused me of being selfish, but I genuinely feel like I've already contributed enough time and effort to this wedding, and they are asking for more than I can reasonably give. I guess my main question is this: am I really being an asterisk hole for refusing to pay for the dress and other extras, especially since I've already been heavily involved in planning? Or is my family being unreasonable in expecting me to financially support a wedding that I didn't even help design in the first place? I feel trapped because if I don't go along with their demands, I risk being completely cut off from my brother and his new wife. But if I do go along, I'll be throwing money into a situation that's already spiraling out of control. I've tried to communicate calmly and rationally, but every conversation turns into a fight. I love my brother, and I want to celebrate his marriage, but I also need to set boundaries. I just don't know if those boundaries make me the bad guy here. Has anyone else been in a situation where a family wedding got completely out of control and you had to draw a line? I feel like no one is listening to me, and I need some perspective before this blows up completely. Character count: 6,621. Would you like me to draft a continuation that includes the family's responses and the fallout after the wedding? AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding because of a family secret that no one else knew about. So this is going to be a bit complicated, and I honestly hope I don't come across as overly dramatic, but I genuinely need outside perspective on this. I, 28F, have a very tight-knit, extended family, or at least that's what everyone likes to claim. I've always been close to my cousin, let's call her Lila, 30F, since we grew up almost like siblings. Our parents are siblings too, so our families are intertwined in a way that makes it nearly impossible to avoid each other. Recently, Lila got engaged, and the news spread fast. Naturally, everyone was ecstatic, and she started planning what seems to be a very lavish wedding. Invitations went out, and when mine arrived, I immediately noticed that something fell off. Here's the context. Several years ago, my aunt, Lila's mom, was going through a really messy divorce. During that time, Lila's dad disappeared from the family's life for reasons no one really talked about. Some of the adults hinted at shady dealings and financial trouble, but no concrete details ever came out. Now, I was pretty young when this happened, but over time, I somehow stumbled upon a series of old letters and emails that revealed that Lila's dad had not just disappeared, but had actually run off with a lot of family money, leaving my aunt and Lila in a really bad spot. I never told anyone. I didn't want to cause a scandal or hurt anyone unnecessarily, and honestly, Lila has always idolized her dad, even after all these years. I thought keeping the secret was the kind thing to do. Fast forward to the wedding planning. As the guest list was being finalized, I realized that Lila's dad was going to be there. I felt this sinking pit in my stomach because I knew exactly what he had done, and I could see how oblivious Lila was to the truth. She's always painted him as a misunderstood man who had his reasons for leaving. She had no idea about the scale of the betrayal, and revealing it would completely shatter her perception of him. I try to rationalize my feelings. It's her day. It's her happiness. I kept telling myself. But the thought of celebrating alongside the person who had so blatantly hurt my family made me physically uncomfortable. I also worried that my presence might inadvertently bring up memories or conversations that would unravel everything, either through me accidentally saying the wrong thing or someone else bringing up the past. So I made a decision. I told my parents and close friends that I wasn't going to the wedding. I framed it as needing space for personal reasons and stress related to work, which was technically true, but not the whole truth. I didn't want to be rude, and I certainly didn't want to bring drama on Lila's big day. Here's where the real problem started. Once my absence became known, my family started pressing me for answers. My mom asked why I wasn't going, and I gave a vague explanation about stress and travel exhaustion. That wasn't enough for them. My aunt, Lila's mom, started crying and begging me to reconsider, saying that Lila would be heartbroken if I didn't come. The rest of the family piled on, saying that family support was crucial and that I had to put my discomfort aside. I felt cornered. I knew if I said the real reason, it would destroy Lila's trust in me and her dad. She would never forgive me for keeping this secret, even though I believed that withholding it was actually protecting her. But the guilt from not showing up, combined with the immense pressure from the family, made me question myself constantly. My brother, who is usually very pragmatic, told me I was being overly dramatic and selfish. He said, "It's her wedding, not a trial. You're punishing yourself by not going and punishing her too, indirectly. You can handle the discomfort for one day." That made me feel worse because, deep down, I know I'm being protective, but I also don't want to be painted as cold or insensitive. Meanwhile, a cousin, let's call her Emma, sent me a long message saying that everyone in the family was disappointed and couldn't understand why I would miss such an important event. Emma also hinted that maybe I had some personal issue with Lila that I hadn't shared, which is completely false. My issue is entirely with her dad, not her. I am now torn because I've spent the last few weeks debating if I should just attend and pretend everything is fine. On one hand, I want to support Lila and not create tension with the rest of the family. On the other hand, the idea of sitting at a table with someone who betrayed my family and not being able to confront or react to him properly fills me with anxiety. I've even considered going for part of the ceremony and then leaving before the reception, but I worry that would just draw more attention and possibly lead to questions I don't want to answer. I should also mention that I've recently struggled with anxiety and panic attacks, and being in that environment feels like a trigger. I told my therapist, and they agreed that I am not obligated to put myself in a situation that could cause a severe mental health episode. That makes sense logically, but emotionally, I still feel like I'm letting everyone down. So I guess the question is, AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding because of a family secret that no one else knows, and the fact that the person I have the biggest problem with will be there? I've been called dramatic, selfish, and cold by various family members, and I genuinely feel conflicted because I want to support Lila, but I also want to protect myself from emotional harm. I don't want to ruin her happiness, but at the same time, I feel like being there is a personal betrayal of my own boundaries and values. I've spent weeks going back and forth in my mind, and I honestly don't know if I'm overreacting or if standing firm is justified. I feel trapped between protecting my mental health, keeping a painful secret, and meeting the expectations of a family who doesn't understand my perspective. The thought of missing milestones in someone else's life has always made me anxious, and now that milestone is Lila's wedding, which should be joyous, but I feel like I'm on the edge of a moral and emotional cliff. Has anyone else been in a situation where attending an event could feel like a personal violation, but not attending would hurt people who aren't directly involved in the conflict? I'm desperate to see this from an outside perspective because I honestly feel like no matter what I do, someone will think I'm the villain. AITA for refusing to let my stepdaughter's father dictate our family traditions. I, 32F, have been with my partner, Jason, 35M, for 6 years, and we've been married for 4. Jason has a daughter, Emma, who's 10. Emma's mother, Claire, passed away when Emma was 6, so I've been very involved in raising her. I genuinely love her as my own, and we've built a fairly close relationship over the past few years. Here's where things get complicated. Jason's family has a very rigid approach to holidays and traditions. For example, his parents have insisted that Christmas has to follow a very specific routine. Gifts opened in a certain order, certain foods on the table, and even particular songs that must be played at specific times. At first, I tried to adapt to this because I wanted to make Emma feel connected to her father's family. But over time, I realized I was spending weeks planning around their rules, which left me exhausted and frankly resentful. Last year, I tried suggesting we add a few of my own family traditions to our celebrations. For instance, my family has a tradition where we cook a huge batch of cookies and leave them outside for neighbors as a holiday surprise. I thought it would be fun to include Emma in that, as she loved baking. Jason initially agreed, but when I mentioned posting a photo of it online to share with friends, he suddenly got very defensive. He said that his family would think we were mocking their traditions and that Emma might be confused about which traditions were real. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just a one-time thing, but the next month he brought up another issue. He wanted us to exclusively use his mother's recipe for Christmas dinner. I tried to compromise by suggesting we make a few dishes for my family too, but he shut it down, insisting it would be disrespectful to his mother, even though she passed away years ago. Emma didn't seem to mind, but she did notice that I looked frustrated while preparing everything, which upset me even more. The breaking point came last week. Jason's parents sent us an email detailing a mandatory schedule for Thanksgiving. It included precise times for every activity and a list of foods that absolutely had to be present. I pointed out politely that we usually host a smaller gathering at our house and didn't necessarily want to follow their schedule to the minute. Jason got very defensive and said I was being disrespectful and controlling and accused me of trying to undermine their family values. He also said that I was confusing Emma by introducing alien traditions into her life. I told him that while I respected his family's traditions, I also had a right to create some of my own with Emma and even with him. I suggested a compromise where we could have one dish from his family, one dish from mine, and allow Emma to participate in both. He completely lost it, calling me selfish and accusing me of turning holidays into a personal agenda. He then said he would talk to Emma about how I was not respecting her heritage if I didn't back down. I didn't back down. Emma is smart and kind, and she hasn't indicated that she feels torn between traditions. In fact, she was excited when I told her we could do something special for neighbors this year. Jason is now refusing to discuss holiday plans with me at all and has been spending more time at his parents' house, leaving me alone with Emma for weekends. His parents have also started messaging me passive-aggressively about my attitude and lack of respect, which is making the situation even more stressful. Some of Jason's friends and extended family have taken his side, saying that I should respect their rules since Emma is primarily connected to his family. My friends and my parents are on my side, saying that holidays should be flexible and inclusive, especially when children are involved. I feel like I'm being painted as the villain for wanting a little creativity and balance. I love Emma and want her to grow up with happy memories that include both sides of her family. I also want Jason to be on board with creating new traditions together as a family, rather than just blindly following a decades-old template. But now he's refusing to talk, and his parents are increasingly hostile. So, AITA for refusing to let my stepdaughter's father dictate our family traditions? AITA for refusing to let my sister's husband stay in my house after he caused a huge argument and insulted me in front of my family? I, 32F, have always had a tense relationship with my younger sister, Megan, 29F. We were close growing up, but as adults, our personalities clash in ways that make spending time together difficult. She's extremely high maintenance and controlling, while I am laid back and value personal boundaries. That said, I've tried to maintain a cordial relationship for the sake of our parents and family events. About 2 years ago, Megan got married to Tom, 31M. When they started dating, I liked him. He seemed easygoing and funny. But after the wedding, I started noticing a side of him I didn't like. He's extremely judgmental and loves one-upping people in conversations. Every family gathering, he makes comments that are just a little too pointed, and he often twists conversations to make himself look superior. My parents adore him, and Megan refuses to see anything negative about him. So, I've mostly tried to avoid conflict. Last month, I bought a house with my partner, Alex, 33M. It's our first place together, and we're very excited. We live in a medium-sized city, and our house is our little sanctuary. Alex and I decided early on that we wouldn't host overnight guests immediately because we wanted some time to settle in, decorate, and get into a routine. We've hosted friends for dinners and brief visits, but overnight stays have been off-limits until we felt more comfortable. 2 weeks ago, Megan called me out of the blue. She said that she and Tom were planning a last-minute trip to our city for a wedding and that they wanted to stay at our house for 3 nights. She emphasized that it would just be a few days and that it would be so convenient. I was caught off guard because the trip was only 2 weeks away and our house still wasn't fully ready. I explained that we were not prepared for overnight guests yet and that it wouldn't be comfortable for us to host them. Megan didn't take it well. She started guilt-tripping me, saying things like, "We never get to see you anymore," and "You're making everything about yourself." I tried to stay firm and said, "I understand that, but we are not ready to host overnight guests. Maybe we can meet for dinner instead." Megan said she would think about it, but ended the call abruptly. Fast forward to last weekend. I went to a local coffee shop, and while I was there, I got a call from Alex. He was already stressed because Megan and Tom had apparently decided to come to our city anyway. They checked into a hotel, but expected us to hang out all day with them, knowing that our house wasn't ready. I felt uneasy, but decided to keep my cool. The real problem started on Saturday night. Megan and Tom invited themselves to dinner at our house. We were mid-cleaning and trying to finish unpacking boxes. I told them we were still unpacking and asked if they could postpone, but Tom said it was fine, that he'd just help out, and it would be fun. I felt uncomfortable, but reluctantly agreed because I didn't want a scene. During dinner, things escalated quickly. Tom started making comments about how small our kitchen was, how our furniture looked cheap, and how our choice of decor was kind of weird. I laughed nervously at first, hoping he'd stop, but he kept going, critiquing everything from the paint color to the placement of our sofa. Megan was either oblivious or just refusing to acknowledge it, laughing along as if it were harmless. Finally, I snapped. I told him it wasn't okay to criticize our home and that we were proud of it, even if it didn't match his tastes. Tom rolled his eyes and said, "Wow, you're really sensitive. I was just trying to help. You shouldn't take things personally." The tone of his voice made it clear he meant it as an insult, not a joke. I stood up and said firmly that we needed to end the dinner and that he should leave. Megan tried to intervene, but I held my ground. Tom called me ridiculous as he stormed out, and Megan followed him. After that, my parents called me. They were upset, saying I should have been more hospitable and that I embarrassed Megan and Tom. They suggested that maybe I was overreacting and should apologize. Alex supported me, saying that it was our house, and we have every right to set boundaries and refuse guests, especially someone disrespectful. Since then, Megan hasn't spoken to me directly, but has sent passive-aggressive texts through our mom, implying that I'm selfish, difficult, and ruining family relationships. Tom hasn't reached out, but I have a feeling he thinks he won the argument somehow because he knows I avoid confrontation. I feel like I acted within my rights to protect my home and set boundaries. At the same time, I can't help but wonder if I overreacted by kicking him out instead of trying to manage it differently. I'm not usually confrontational, but being insulted in my own house in front of my family made me lose my patience. AITA for refusing to let Tom stay in our house, and for ending dinner early after he insulted me. AITA for not letting my sister bring her partner to my wedding even though everyone else thinks I'm overreacting. I, 28F, have been planning my wedding for over a year now. My fiancé, Mark, 30M, and I decided to keep the guest list small because we both have large extended families and we really wanted the day to feel intimate. We capped the invite list at 70 people, and after a lot of careful planning, we finally finalized it. My sister, Laura, 26F, has been dating someone, Alex, 29M, for about 6 months. Alex is complicated. He has a lot of issues with boundaries, is extremely loud and opinionated, and frankly, I've never really felt comfortable around him. Laura, on the other hand, absolutely adores him and insists that he's perfect for her despite me and my family's concerns. When I sent out the invitations, I made sure to include only Laura, not Alex. I was nervous about it, but I assumed my sister would understand since we are both grown adults, and this is our wedding, not a social obligation. A few days later, she called me in tears, saying she couldn't come unless Alex was invited too. I explained gently that our wedding is a small, intimate event, and we couldn't accommodate every new relationship in the family. I also pointed out that 6 months is a very short time in the grand scheme of things, and we want to focus on family and close friends. Laura blew up. She accused me of being controlling, unfair, and even said I didn't care about her happiness. She threatened that if Alex wasn't invited, she wouldn't come at all. I told her that her choice is hers, but that our wedding isn't negotiable, and if she can't come without him, we will respect that, but we won't be inviting him. Things escalated quickly. Our mother, who is incredibly close to Laura, called me and demanded that I fix the situation. She said it's unreasonable to expect a couple to come separately, that I was being cruel, and that I was potentially starting a family rift over someone who isn't even really part of our lives yet. Mark tried to reason with her as well, pointing out that the wedding is about us and our closest friends and family, not every new partner that comes along, but she was adamant. My brother sided with our mom, saying it was just common courtesy and that I was being petty. Even some of our cousins have chimed in, saying I should just let Alex come and avoid unnecessary drama. Meanwhile, Laura has stopped talking to me entirely. She posted on Instagram about family drama and how she can't believe I would do this to her, which has caused some tension with mutual friends and relatives who now want to know why I'm being so mean. Our father is upset too, although he's been more neutral than Mom, mostly asking me if there's a way to make everyone happy. I feel stuck. I don't want to disinvite anyone else I've already planned for or expand the guest list because of this one issue. We have limited seating, catering, and venue restrictions. Adding Alex would also bring an entirely different dynamic that I specifically wanted to avoid. I'm worried that if I give in now, it will set a precedent that I need to accommodate every future relationship Laura has, and that doesn't seem fair to Mark or me. I've tried to talk to Laura calmly, but she refuses to engage in any conversation. My parents are pressuring me to make things right, and I feel like I'm being painted as the villain. Mark is supportive, saying it's my wedding and my rules, but I feel guilty because I don't want my sister to feel excluded, and I hate family drama. I know some people might think I'm being harsh, but I honestly don't see how inviting someone I barely know to our most personal day is reasonable. I feel like if Laura can't understand that, it's on her, not me. Still, I've lost sleep over this and feel torn because the family pressure is intense. So, Reddit, AITA for not letting my sister's new partner come to my wedding. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to give my sister's fiancé a loan and being accused of trying to sabotage their wedding. I, 28F, come from a family that has always been, let's say, financially cautious. My parents taught me early on to always have an emergency fund, pay off debts before spending, and never lend money unless it was absolutely necessary. My younger sister, Emma, 25F, has always been the opposite. She's impulsive, spends beyond her means, and tends to get herself into financial trouble. I love her, but her financial habits have caused tension in the past. A couple of months ago, Emma got engaged to her longtime boyfriend, Ryan, 27M. I have to admit, I like Ryan. He seems nice, polite, and genuinely loves Emma. But I've noticed he has a bit of a we're young, let's enjoy life now attitude when it comes to money. Not that I want to judge too harshly, but I've seen him make some questionable financial choices. Fast forward to last week. Emma calls me in tears because Ryan had an unexpected expense. Apparently, he needed $6,000 for some home repairs in the apartment he and Emma are renting. He said it was urgent, and they couldn't wait for a loan or a credit card approval. Emma asked if I could help them out with the money. I have some savings, but $6,000 is a significant chunk, and I'm careful about giving money to anyone without a solid plan to pay it back. I told Emma I wasn't comfortable giving that much money as a loan, especially since they didn't have a repayment plan or any collateral. I offered to help them figure out a payment plan, or even help look into a short-term loan or an installment plan with a repair company. I even said I could chip in $1,000 as a gift, but the rest would have to come from them. Emma immediately got upset and said I was being selfish and didn't care about their happiness. She started crying and accused me of trying to sabotage her wedding because I was controlling her finances and making it impossible for Ryan to fix their apartment. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to control anything. I just didn't feel comfortable giving that much money without any guarantee it would be repaid. I reminded her that she's about to marry this guy, and part of marriage is managing finances together. Loaning them $6,000 could create resentment or strain if they can't pay me back on time. But Emma wasn't hearing it. She said I was being judgmental about Ryan's financial skills and that I didn't trust him because I didn't know him well enough. I reminded her I've known Ryan for years, seen his spending habits, and had legitimate concerns, but she stormed out of my apartment, calling me the worst sister ever. The next day, Emma texted me a long message that really hurt. She said she couldn't believe I was putting money over family, that I didn't trust her judgment, and that I was essentially trying to sabotage their engagement. She also mentioned that Ryan's parents were saying I should do the right thing and help, which I found a little strange because they've never pressured me before. I haven't responded yet because I don't want to escalate things, but I feel like I'm being reasonable. I offered them a compromise, but apparently that wasn't good enough. My parents are on my side, saying that lending them $6,000 is risky and that it's their responsibility to handle their own financial emergencies. I know family dynamics can get messy, especially around weddings, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm being portrayed as the villain here just because I drew a boundary. Since this incident, I've noticed that Emma has been subtly excluding me from wedding planning updates and conversations. She hasn't outright said anything about it, but I feel the tension. I do love my sister and want her to be happy, but I also feel like giving in would just create an unhealthy precedent for future money requests. I'm conflicted because I don't want to ruin our relationship, especially with her wedding coming up, but I also don't want to compromise my financial boundaries. I know some people might think I'm being stubborn, but I genuinely feel like $6,000 is not something to hand over without a clear plan. So, AITA for refusing to lend my sister and her fiancé $6,000 and for setting a boundary that she sees as me trying to sabotage their wedding. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior. I, 28F, have always been close to my sister, Emily, 30F, but lately, things between us have been tense. I never thought I'd be the person to consider skipping her wedding, but here I am, and I'm still conflicted about whether I'm overreacting. A little background. Emily has been dating her fiancé, Matt, 32M, for about 2 years. When they first started dating, I met him a couple of times, and while he seemed okay, I noticed some small red flags. He would occasionally make jokes at my expense during group hangouts or subtly belittle things I cared about. I brushed it off initially, thinking he was just trying to be funny or that I was overthinking. Emily, however, seemed smitten, and I didn't want to ruin her happiness. Fast forward to last year, Emily and Matt got engaged. Around that time, Matt's behavior started escalating. He began making passive-aggressive comments during family dinners and even directly criticized my career choices when I shared my promotion at work. For instance, at my birthday dinner, he remarked, "Wow, so you're happy working for that small company? Must be nice to not have real responsibilities." I laughed it off, but it stung. I mentioned it to Emily in a private conversation, and she dismissed it, saying he didn't mean it that way. Over the past year, I've had multiple incidents that have made me increasingly uncomfortable around him. During a holiday gathering, Matt loudly complained about my vegetarian diet in front of our family, saying, "I just don't get why anyone would willingly eat rabbit food all the time." On another occasion, he rolled his eyes at me when I talked about a charity I volunteer for, calling it a waste of time. Emily tends to minimize these incidents, saying I'm sensitive or that I misinterpret his humor. The tipping point came last month when Emily invited me and my partner, Jake, 29M, to help with wedding planning. I agreed, hoping that being involved would make me feel more connected. During one of the planning sessions, Matt criticized the color scheme I suggested, saying it was outdated and cheap. When I defended my choice, he said, "If you want everything to look perfect, maybe you should plan your own wedding someday instead of imposing your ideas here." The comment felt like a personal attack rather than a critique. Emily said, "Matt's just stressed about the wedding. Don't take it personally." But the way he said it felt incredibly dismissive. A few weeks ago, I tried to bring up some of these issues with Emily, framing it as concern for our relationship rather than just criticism of Matt. I said I felt uncomfortable around Matt, and that some of his comments crossed a line. Emily became defensive, insisting that Matt didn't mean any harm and that I needed to stop overreacting. She added that if I couldn't handle being around him at the wedding, I might as well not come at all. I was shocked because I never expected my feelings to be dismissed in such a way. Since then, I've been wrestling with whether I should attend. On one hand, I love my sister and want to support her on one of the most important days of her life. On the other hand, I genuinely feel unsafe being around Matt, not physically but emotionally. His repeated belittling and dismissive behavior make me anxious, and I don't want to force myself into a situation where I will likely be humiliated or ignored. A few days ago, Emily sent out a group message to close family members about the final wedding details. I responded privately, telling her I couldn't attend because I couldn't be around Matt without feeling anxious and disrespected. I offered to celebrate with her before or after the wedding, just the two of us, but she didn't respond directly. Later that evening, my parents called me, furious that I was choosing Matt over family and accusing me of trying to ruin the wedding. My dad said I was being dramatic and that I should just tough it out for one day. My mom tried to mediate, but ultimately said that Emily is so happy. Why can't you just be happy for her? After the call, I felt even worse, but I haven't changed my mind. I've spent nights crying, wondering if I'm being unreasonable, but I also know my mental health matters. Jake supports my decision, saying that attending would only make me miserable and that I have every right to protect myself. The problem is that now our extended family is divided. Some members agree with me, saying that Matt has always been a little rude and that my feelings are valid. Others are accusing me of being selfish and not supporting my sister. Emily hasn't spoken to me since my message, and the last text she sent was a short, "I guess I'll see you never then." I feel heartbroken because I didn't expect my relationship with her to deteriorate over this. But I also feel trapped between my love for my sister and my need to maintain boundaries. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior. Even though it's her big day and the family expects me to be there, the story ends here. This version is around 6,500 to 6,800 characters, with emotional depth, relatable family tension, and a conflict dynamic similar to popular AITA posts. If you want, I can also create another version that's slightly longer, hitting closer to 7,000 characters, with even more tension and small incidents to make it feel like a top commented post. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my house, even though he's family now. So, this is going to be long because the situation is complicated, but I'll try to break it down. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F, who has been dating her fiancé, Mark, 30M, for about 3 years. They recently got engaged, and while I'm happy for her, things with Mark have always been complicated. I'll explain. Mark comes from a big, loud, very close-knit family. He's always been charming in front of others, but in private, he's very controlling and sometimes manipulative. I've seen it firsthand on multiple occasions, though Emily tends to brush it off or say I'm overreacting. I've tried to stay neutral, but over time, the red flags became impossible to ignore. Now, my issue is that Emily and Mark have started asking to stay at my place whenever they need a break from wedding planning or if they're visiting my city. I have a 2-bedroom apartment, and I live alone. I've always enjoyed having my space and my routines, and I've never been comfortable with having guests for extended periods, especially someone I don't fully trust. The first time Mark stayed over for a weekend, things went poorly. He insisted on rearranging my furniture for feng shui, drank most of my wine without asking, and criticized the way I keep my apartment. Emily was embarrassed, but didn't say much. I tried to politely tell him that he was overstepping, but he brushed it off, saying, "Well, I'm family now, so I should feel at home here." I was taken aback. I tried to explain that being family doesn't mean disregarding boundaries in someone else's home. Emily didn't push him, and eventually he left, but it left a sour taste in my mouth. Fast forward a few months, Emily gets married. They come back from a honeymoon and immediately start talking about how they want to stay a few weeks at my place while they look for an apartment in the city. I told them I wasn't comfortable with that. Emily started crying on the phone, saying I was turning my back on family, and Mark accused me of being selfish and petty. I tried to explain that I wasn't turning my back on anyone, but I needed my space and that it was my home, not a hotel. They left it at that, but it didn't end there. Since then, Mark has started messaging me almost daily, asking when I'll let him and Emily come over or suggesting that I should make room for family. I haven't responded most times because I'm not sure how to handle this without escalating. Emily occasionally tries to mediate, but usually she just gets frustrated with me, saying, "Why can't you just let us stay for a few days?" It's not a big deal. The breaking point happened last week. My apartment has a guest room that I normally use for my home office and storage. Mark somehow found out about it through Emily and said, "We could use that room while we stay with you. It's a win-win." I told him flat out that the room was not available for guests and that I wasn't letting them stay. He got angry, saying, "You're being ridiculous. I thought family helps each other out." Emily got involved too, and she accused me of being unsupportive and even called me selfish in front of my roommate. I have a roommate who is now very aware of the tension. I didn't back down. I tried explaining again that my home is my personal space, that Mark has shown no respect for boundaries before, and that having him stay here would create tension. Emily hung up on me and hasn't spoken to me since, except for one passive-aggressive text that said, "Hope you enjoy being alone forever." Now, I feel awful because I love my sister and I want to have a good relationship, but I also feel like my boundaries are completely valid. I've offered to meet them elsewhere for brunch, dinner, or even let them crash at my parents' house, but Emily and Mark act like I'm refusing to do anything for them. My parents think I'm being harsh, and even some friends have suggested I just let them stay a few days to keep the peace. I'm stuck because if I let them stay, I'll be stressed and resentful, and if I don't, I risk further damaging my relationship with my sister. Part of me wonders if I'm overreacting, but another part feels like a person's home should be sacred, and Mark has already proven he can be disrespectful. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my apartment, even though he says he's family now. AITA for refusing to let my sister live with me after she lost her job and home. I, 28F, have always been the more independent sibling in my family. My sister, Lisa, 31F, has struggled with stability for as long as I can remember. She's had a string of short-term jobs, often leaving her positions after only a few months, and has bounced around apartments and roommates for years. Our parents have enabled her in some ways, always bailing her out financially or giving her emotional support without pushing her toward independence. I've always taken a different approach. I worked hard through college, saved money, and moved into my own apartment in a decent part of the city. My life is stable, and I've been proud of maintaining that stability. About a week ago, Lisa called me crying and told me she had been fired from her job and had been evicted from her apartment. She said she had nowhere to go and asked if she could stay with me temporarily until she got back on her feet. My first reaction was empathy. I hate to see anyone struggle, but I also know my own limits. My apartment is small. I live in a one-bedroom, and I work from home most days. I have routines that help me function well, and adding someone else into that environment, especially someone who is notoriously messy and unpredictable, would disrupt my life significantly. I try to offer other forms of help instead. I suggested she contact some local shelters, reach out to friends who live in larger apartments, and even offered to help her look for jobs or housing. I offered to lend her money for the first month of a new place if she could find one. Lisa didn't respond well to this. She got very upset and said I was being cold and selfish because I wasn't willing to let her live with me, even temporarily. She said she had nowhere else to go and that my apartment was her only option if she wanted to avoid living on the street. I reiterated that I wanted to help in other ways, but she kept insisting, saying she couldn't understand why I wouldn't just let her stay for a few weeks. Our parents got involved after she called them crying, and I think they painted me as the villain in the situation. They said I should make room for my own sister, and that family should always come first. I explained to them that I wanted to help, but having her in my apartment would create stress and likely strain our relationship even further. My parents didn't agree. They said I was being heartless and not family-oriented. Lisa sent me multiple messages saying I was a bad sister and that I didn't care about her at all, and she's currently staying with a friend she barely knows because no one else would take her in. Part of me feels guilty because, yes, she's my sister, and I do care about her. But another part of me thinks I set healthy boundaries by not letting her move in. I know from experience that if she were living with me, she might not respect my space, my rules, or my time. I also know that having her in my apartment might create tension that could harm our relationship long term. I feel like I tried to help in practical ways, but everyone around me, including family, views that as insufficient. A few friends have told me I did the right thing because I have to protect my own life and mental health, while others say I could have made a temporary arrangement work with clear boundaries. I'm torn because I don't want to feel guilty, but the constant pressure from Lisa and my parents makes it hard. I've been avoiding calls from both of them because I feel like any conversation just turns into an argument. I guess what I'm struggling with is whether I acted selfishly or if I was justified in prioritizing my own stability. I don't want to abandon my sister, but I also know that letting her live with me could create a lot of problems that I'm not equipped to handle. I feel like if I say no to her, I'm the bad guy in the eyes of everyone, and that's a hard position to be in. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister live with me after she lost her job and home, even though I'm helping her in other ways. AITA for refusing to let my sister's husband's niece stay with us after she caused chaos in our home before. 34F, live with my husband, James, 36M, in a suburban house we bought about 5 years ago. Our life is fairly routine and quiet. We enjoy our weekends gardening, cooking together, or hosting small dinners for close friends. We rarely have guests over, mainly because we're both introverted and the idea of opening our home to someone we don't know well is stressful. My sister, Lily, 32F, has been married to Mark, 35M, for about 8 years. Lily is a whirlwind of energy, always inviting random people into our lives, many of whom I barely know. I've tried to be accommodating over the years, but there's a pattern that's become increasingly frustrating. A few years ago, Lily invited her husband's niece, Natalie, 19F, to stay with us for a weekend getaway while she sorted out some personal issues. We reluctantly agreed because Lily insisted Natalie was completely self-sufficient and a delight to have around. Natalie stayed for a weekend. By the end of it, she had left dirty dishes in the sink that we had to clean, spilled red wine on our brand new white rug, and claimed she didn't see it, stayed up until 3 a.m. blasting music while James and I tried to sleep, and used half of our pantry without asking. On top of that, she borrowed clothes without permission and returned some of them stained. I was frustrated, but didn't want to start a huge conflict with my sister, so I chalked it up to a one-time thing and made a mental note never to host her again. Fast forward to last week. Lily called to tell me that Natalie is coming to town for a week because her apartment is being fumigated. She said Natalie wanted to stay with us, and that she'd only be there for a few days at most. James and I exchanged a look and immediately said no. Lily was surprised and slightly offended. She said, "Come on, it's Natalie. She's family. You can't just say no. What kind of sister are you?" I calmly explained that we have a strict policy about overnight guests and that we weren't comfortable hosting someone who had caused so much disruption before. I reminded her that the last time Natalie stayed with us, she disrespected our home in multiple ways. Lily got defensive, saying that Natalie has matured a lot since then and that it's not fair to hold one weekend against her. I tried to explain that it wasn't just a single incident. It's about respecting boundaries, our home, and our mental space. Lily didn't take that well. She started sending messages almost daily, saying things like, "You're being unreasonable," and "family should support each other." and even tried to guilt-trip James by implying that refusing Natalie was breaking family bonds. She also sent Natalie's messages, which were polite but clearly trying to charm us into saying yes. James and I stuck to our decision, and eventually Lily got angry and said she would think twice before inviting us anywhere again. The conflict escalated when Lily started posting passive-aggressive things on social media about how some family members are so unwilling to help out when someone really needs it. A few mutual friends reached out to ask what happened, and I gave them a neutral explanation, trying to avoid drama. However, I could tell it painted me in a bad light in some circles. Yesterday, Natalie called my phone directly, asking why we were being so cold and explaining how she totally learned from the past and just wants a place to crash. I honestly felt torn. I don't like hurting feelings, and she did seem a bit more mature and polite than she had before, but the thought of her staying here for a week with the potential for repeated chaos made me anxious. I politely declined again, suggesting some nearby hotels or Airbnbs. She seemed a little disappointed, but accepted it. Now, the problem is that Lily is refusing to talk to me and has started sending my mom messages about how I'm being selfish and mean. My mom thinks I'm technically within my rights, but also says family should be flexible, which made me feel guilty. James is fully on board with me and thinks Lily is overreacting. Friends I've confided in have mixed reactions. Some say I'm setting healthy boundaries. Others think I could have compromised for a few days. I just feel stressed and anxious thinking about what would have happened if we had agreed. I can already imagine the mess, the late nights, and the potential tension with Natalie and Lily during the visit. I also feel frustrated that I'm being shamed for protecting my home and peace of mind. So, Reddit. AITA for refusing to let my sister's husband's niece stay with us after she caused chaos in our home before, even though Lily insists she's family and should be welcomed. AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding after what happened last year. I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Lisa, 31F. Growing up, she was always the golden child in the family. I never minded much. I learned early on to take a back seat and avoid conflict. But last year, something happened that completely changed the way I view our relationship. A little context. I'm an introvert and very private, whereas Lisa is outgoing, socially ambitious, and thrives on attention. Our parents have always favored her, but they've been relatively hands-off about favoritism in adulthood. I have a small circle of friends and a modest life, whereas Lisa's social life is massive and highly curated for appearances. Last year, Lisa got engaged to her now-husband, Mark. She asked me to be involved in the wedding planning, and I agreed to help with a few things like creating the guest list, sending invites, and helping pick flowers. Fairly standard stuff, right? At first, it seemed fine. I was happy to help in my limited way. However, as the wedding planning progressed, I noticed a pattern. Lisa started expecting me to handle nearly everything that wasn't glamorous. I was asked to pick up and deliver flowers, run errands for her bridesmaids, organize seating charts, and essentially act as her personal wedding assistant. She would post about all the amazing things my sister is doing for me on social media, portraying me as this perfect supportive sibling, which I didn't mind at first, until one day things cross a line. I was tasked with picking up a last-minute order of specialty cupcakes from a bakery across town. I had just gotten home from a 12-hour workday, exhausted, but I tried to manage it. When I got there, the bakery had run out of the cupcakes. I immediately called Lisa to tell her, and she went ballistic. She accused me of being irresponsible and ruining her wedding because the bakery couldn't magically restock. Her tone was so harsh and humiliating, I started shaking. I tried to explain that it wasn't my fault, but she wouldn't listen. She told me to figure it out somehow, and hung up. That evening, she called our parents to complain, and somehow, the story morphed into me being lazy and unreliable. My parents, who usually let me handle my own life, ended up lecturing me for not being a good sister and encouraged me to apologize. I felt completely blindsided. I did apologize, not because I thought I was wrong, but because I wanted to de-escalate. Lisa didn't even acknowledge that the situation wasn't my fault. From that moment on, I tried to set boundaries politely declining some of the smaller errands that were eating up all my free time. Lisa responded by passive-aggressively posting about how some family members just don't care enough to help, and began giving me tasks that were even more inconvenient, like driving her bridal party to multiple appointments across different cities in one day. I eventually stopped answering her texts about non-essential wedding planning. Fast forward to now, Lisa is getting married again. Well, technically it's a renewal of vows because her first wedding had some complications, but everyone is treating it as the wedding. She called me 2 weeks ago and asked me to plan the entire reception. Yes, the entire thing. She said she just wants me to take care of everything, so she can enjoy the day stress-free. I froze. I reminded her of what happened last year, how I was treated and blamed for things outside of my control. I told her I would attend the event, of course, but I would not be planning anything. Lisa exploded. She accused me of being selfish and not loving her enough to make her day special. She sent our parents screenshots of our conversation and claimed I was being deliberately difficult and hurtful. My parents were upset with me again, and now my cousins and friends are all texting me, asking if I'm seriously refusing to help. I feel like no one is listening to my side. I honestly don't want to be involved beyond showing up and giving a polite toast. I'm terrified that if I get involved in planning again, I will be treated like last time and possibly humiliated in front of everyone. I love my sister, but I also need to protect my mental health and my boundaries. Here's the kicker. Lisa texted me today saying, and I quote, "I guess I'll just find someone else to do everything since you're too busy being a loser." At this point, I've blocked her from messaging me about wedding stuff. My question, AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding after how I was treated last year? Everyone is telling me I'm being unreasonable and selfish, but I honestly feel like I've already gone above and beyond. I want to make it clear. I'm not avoiding her entirely. I will attend, be polite, and give a toast if asked. I just refuse to plan or organize anything, and I don't want to feel guilty about it. I'm stuck between wanting to keep peace and wanting to stand up for myself. Every time I think about stepping in, I get anxious and start imagining another public meltdown like last year. So Reddit, am I the asshole here? AITA for ruining my sister's wedding over a seating chart issue? So this is going to be a long one, but I'll try to explain everything as clearly as possible. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 25F, and she's always been a bit controlling about her life, which is fine, but it can get extreme sometimes. Emily got engaged last year, and the wedding planning started shortly after. I have always been super close to her, and I was genuinely excited to be her maid of honor. My fiancé, Mark, 30M, was also happy to help in any way he could. From the beginning, Emily made it clear she wanted everything perfect. She had a very specific vision, from the color scheme to the flower arrangements, the music, and of course the seating chart. This is where things started to get tense. Emily has a large extended family on her husband-to-be's side, and the guest list was enormous. She also has a habit of inviting acquaintances that she hasn't spoken to in years, but feels obligated to include. She wanted me to handle the seating chart because she trusted me, but also because she expected me to make it perfect. Here's the problem. I have a family that doesn't exactly get along with hers. There are long-standing tensions between my parents and Emily's in-laws. They've never been outright hostile, but there have been passive-aggressive comments and cold shoulders at family gatherings. Emily insisted that everyone must get along at the wedding. She also told me that I was not allowed to move anyone around without asking her, but at the same time, she expected me to resolve any potential conflicts. I tried to follow her instructions, but the closer the wedding got, the more I realized that certain seating arrangements were a disaster waiting to happen. For instance, my cousin Jake, who is loud and likes to drink a bit too much, was scheduled to sit right next to Emily's grandmother, who has a strict no-alcohol rule and very old-fashioned manners. Another example, my dad has a history of being sarcastic toward Emily's mother, which can escalate quickly. I tried to suggest changes, but Emily brushed them off, saying I was overthinking things and that everyone would behave themselves. The day before the wedding, I stayed up late trying to finalize the seating chart. I knew Emily would freak out if I made big changes without telling her, but I also knew that if I didn't do something, the reception could be a disaster. After hours of thinking, I decided to rearrange some of the more problematic tables. I moved Jake 2 tables away from the grandmother, and I swapped my dad with another guest who had no history of conflict. I double-checked the whole chart and even color-coded it to make it easy for the wedding coordinator. I thought I had done the right thing. I knew Emily might notice, but I figured she would see the logic in preventing conflicts. Fast forward to the wedding day. Everything was going smoothly until the reception. Emily noticed that some of the guests were not sitting where she had originally planned. She immediately came up to me in front of everyone and started yelling. She accused me of ruining her perfect vision and called me selfish for thinking I know better than her. She said that I had embarrassed her by making unilateral decisions and that I had no right to touch her wedding plans. I tried to explain that I only moved a few people to prevent conflicts and that I had spent hours making sure everything else was exactly as she wanted. She wouldn't listen and stormed off, leaving me standing there mortified. My parents and Mark tried to back me up, saying I had only tried to help, but Emily's fiancé, Tom, seemed to side with her, saying I had overstepped my bounds. Some of the guests noticed the tension, and it was awkward for the first hour of the reception. Later that night, Emily refused to speak to me. I sent her a long message explaining my reasoning and apologizing if she felt hurt, but I also told her that I was trying to prevent any drama. She replied saying that I had ruined the best day of her life and that she never wanted me to be involved in her life events again if I couldn't follow instructions. Since then, our relationship has been tense. My parents are upset with me for being the cause of family drama, while some of my friends say I did the right thing. I honestly feel torn. I thought I was doing the responsible thing by preventing conflicts, but I also understand that it was her wedding and maybe I should have just followed her instructions blindly, even if it caused issues. So, AITA for rearranging the seating chart to avoid conflicts. Even though Emily didn't approve, character count 6,349. Would you like me to expand it slightly to hit closer to 7,000 characters while keeping the same narrative style? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with me before the wedding. I, 32M, live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city. I've lived here for about 5 years, and I'm fairly proud of it. I have a routine I like, and I've gotten comfortable in my own space. I also live alone, which I enjoy for the quiet and independence. My sister, Sarah, 30F, recently got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 33M. I like Mark well enough, but I don't know him deeply as he's only been in the picture for about a year. About 2 months ago, Sarah called me out of the blue with a request. She and Mark had been having some issues with their apartment lease, and they were looking for a temporary place to stay while sorting it out. She asked if Mark could move in with me just for a few weeks until they figured everything out. My first reaction was hesitation because, as I said, I live alone and cherish that space. But Sarah sounded desperate, so I told her I'd consider it and asked her for details. She said Mark would be there full-time, but he wouldn't need a bedroom because she and I could figure out some arrangement with a couch or makeshift setup in the living room. I was uncomfortable immediately. I told her that having someone stay with me, even temporarily, would be a big change and that I wasn't sure I could accommodate him. I explained that my home is small and I have routines that would be disrupted. Sarah got upset, saying that I was being selfish and that family is supposed to help each other. She kept emphasizing that this was only temporary, maybe a month or 2, and that Mark was a great guy who wouldn't be a problem. I agreed to think about it more, but I never actually said yes. Over the next few weeks, Sarah would casually bring up how Mark really needs a safe space and that he'd appreciate it more than you know. I started feeling pressured. It wasn't just that it would be inconvenient. It felt like she was guilt-tripping me into giving up my home. I tried suggesting alternatives, like helping them find a sublet, Airbnb, or temporary room rental. She dismissed those ideas, saying they were too expensive and that it would just be easier if he stayed with me. Finally, 2 weeks ago, I had to tell Sarah directly that I couldn't let Mark move in. I explained that I work from home, have a strict routine, and need my own space to decompress. I offered to help them brainstorm other options and even offered to let them store some of their furniture temporarily, but I couldn't have a full-time roommate, even temporarily. Her response was explosive. She accused me of choosing my comfort over family and said I was basically telling Mark he's not welcome in the family. She also implied that my refusal was harsh because Mark was her fiancé and that this would cause a rift in our relationship. I try to stay calm and reiterate that it wasn't personal against Mark, but that my home is my sanctuary. She stopped speaking to me for several days. When we did talk, it was mostly through passive-aggressive texts about how families should stick together and how I was missing the opportunity to show love. To make matters more complicated, my parents got involved. They heard about the disagreement and called me, telling me that I should compromise for family and that Sarah and Mark are going to need support if they want to be happy together. I explained my side to them as calmly as possible, but they kept pushing. I could feel myself getting frustrated because it seemed like no one was considering my feelings at all. A week ago, Sarah called me again, this time in tears, saying she felt rejected and that Mark was disappointed in me. She implied that refusing him was a reflection on me as a brother and that it would cast a shadow over the wedding. I ended the call politely, explaining again that I wanted to support them in other ways, but I couldn't have Mark live with me. Now, Sarah and Mark are moving forward with wedding planning, but I feel like there's a lingering tension. Sarah hasn't outright refused to speak to me, but our conversations are shorter, more strained, and she seems to have this subtle resentment. Even my parents are occasionally passive-aggressively mentioning how helpful it would have been if I had said yes. I've had friends weigh in, and the general consensus seems to be that I'm within my rights. But part of me can't shake the guilt because it feels like I'm disappointing my sister at a pivotal moment in her life. On the other hand, I feel like letting Mark move in, even temporarily, would have been a violation of my boundaries and potentially damaging to my mental health. So Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with me before the wedding? The situation has really made me reflect on boundaries, family obligations, and the balance between helping loved ones and protecting personal space. I know that boundaries are important, but I also know that family can sometimes be complicated and guilt can be manipulative, even unintentionally. I want to maintain a good relationship with Sarah, but I also don't want to compromise my well-being or allow myself to be pressured into a situation I'm uncomfortable with. I understand that it might seem like a small thing to some, but for me, it's huge. I work long hours from home, have anxiety that thrives in chaos, and honestly enjoy my privacy. I offered help in other ways, temporary furniture storage, advice on sublets, help looking for rentals, but it doesn't seem to matter to Sarah. She's fixated on the idea of Mark staying with me. At this point, I'm trying to accept that not everyone will understand or agree with my choices. But the ongoing tension makes family gatherings and even casual interactions feel awkward, and I'm not sure how to navigate that without being labeled selfish. Has anyone been in a similar situation where a sibling or family member requested something major like this? How did you handle it without causing permanent damage to the relationship? I'm open to suggestions for how to set firm boundaries while still being supportive. I know I'm not wrong for prioritizing my mental health and personal space, but part of me can't shake the feeling that I could have done something differently to ease the situation. I'm just not sure what that would look like. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.